Hey boys, it's HarmNone. Today, we are going to be ranking every single Ubermacht vehicle in Grand Theft Auto Online in tier list form. Now before we get into this video, there is something that you must know. This list is 100% factual and cannot be argued with. If you cannot accept these terms and conditions, you should exit off of the video before it even starts. However, if you're willing to accept my conditions, let's go ahead and get started with F tier. Starting off F tier, we have the Sentinel Convertible. Now, of course, something has to be F tier, and unfortunately, the Sentinel Convertible seemed like the most logical choice. However, this is actually not the Ubermacht vehicle that I dislike the most. In fact, I actually like most of the Ubermacht vehicles, so I'll just have you know that before we get any further into this video. The Sentinel Convertible goes for $95,000 and is available on Southern San Andreas Super Autos, or of course you can get one off the street. I find the Sentinel Convertible is just a lot worse than the Sentinel XS, which is the hardtop version of the car. It also costs more, and I think that it just generally kind of looks worse. So I just don't really see why I would rank the Sentinel Convertible any higher than being the last car on the list. It's good still, don't get me wrong, I actually like this thing, it drives pretty decently. It's just not quite as good as the hardtop version, nor is it as good as some of the other vehicles that are going to be ahead of it on this list. So with that being said, let's move on to the next vehicle, and also the final vehicle of F tier. For the final vehicle of F tier, and the Ubermacht vehicle that I hate the absolute most in Grand Theft Auto Online, we have the Ubermacht Zion Classic. Or Xeon Classic, depending on how you want to pronounce it. Xeon Classic just, well, looks awful. It's got a soft top convertible, which is just, ugh, the worst thing. Now, the problem with the Xeon Classic is, well, it really is completely the soft top convertible. If this thing just had a hard top convertible, I probably wouldn't hate it that much, because I actually like how the Xeon handles. I actually like the general performance of the Xeon. I think this is actually a great performing car. It's not the greatest looking car. It kind of looks like a Sentinel, but the back kind of like has some sort of deformity, but it's okay because it does genuinely have better performance than the Sentinel, which is why I had to rank this thing ahead of the Sentinel Convertible. The Xeon has exceptionally good handling in my opinion. It does have a ton of grip, and with customization options applied as well, it gets even better. This thing does have a spoiler option, and it does have some other cool things that you can do to it. However, that soft top convertible has definitely landed this thing in F tier, and it is absolutely deserving of being here. The Xeon Classic goes for $65K, but you should probably spend $60 and just get the regular Xeon. Anyways, that's it for F tier, and that is it for the Xeon Cabrio. Let's move on to the next vehicle, and also the next tier, of course. And of course, the first vehicle to start off C tier, we have the Ubermacht Oracle XS. Now, this is the older version of the Oracle. There are two versions of it in GTA Online. The XS is definitely more of an early 2000s, maybe even a late 90s version of it. And I'd say it's based pretty heavily off of the BMW 5 Series. You could argue that it's maybe even a 7 Series, but I'd say probably a 5 Series. The Oracle XS goes for $82,000 on Southern San Andreas Super Autos, and it is a 4-door luxury sedan. This thing actually is very, very good. When you put engine upgrades, turbo, and transmission upgrades on this car, it becomes quite quick. In addition to this, this is also one of my favorite cars to drift in GTA Online. It can actually hold angle really, really well, and it has enough power to push itself through a power slide, which is really nice to have. For $82,000, you absolutely cannot go wrong with an Oracle XS. This vehicle is absolutely awesome. It looks pretty good, and the performance matches up with the looks. Overall, a very, very good vehicle. It's time to move on to the next one. Next up, we have the Sentinel XS. Now, this is the rightful position for the Sentinel XS. This car is much better than the convertible variant of it. It has much more customization, generally better performance, and of course it is far superior in the looks department. The Sentinel XS goes for $60,000 as opposed to the $95,000 for the convertible, so it's a lot cheaper. You can also steal these off of the street with some good customization in the Vinewood Hills area, so if you're a newer player, that might be something that you will want to do. The Sentinel XS has enough customization for a starter car for sure, more than enough I would say actually. And it's pretty quick once you fully upgrade it. Not as quick as the Xeon, but it is still pretty fast. I do like how this thing looks, I like how it feels, I like how it handles. There's really nothing that I dislike about the Sentinel XS, it's just there's a lot of cars that are just a little bit better than this thing coming up ahead of it on the list. My one complaint about the Sentinel XS is it doesn't have the greatest handling. It does tend to oversteer a little too much for my liking personally, but it's not really the Sentinel's fault. For 60 grand, you can't go wrong with this car. Anyways, that's it for the Sentinel XS. Let's move on to the next vehicle. Next up, for the final vehicle of C tier, we have the Ubermacht Zion, coming in at $60,000. Now, the thing that's interesting about this is it's actually considered to be the Zion XS on the rear of the car, which is kind of cool. This thing actually has some pretty decent customization. I'd say, you know, maybe not quite as much as the Sentinel XS, but very close. However, this thing does have far better performance, in my opinion, largely due to the handling. This vehicle has pretty much identical handling to the Ubermacht Zion Cabrio. However, it does have a few more customization options, meaning that it is just far superior. The car has good acceleration, it's got a decent top speed for being a $60,000 vehicle, which by the way is the exact same price as the Sentinel XS, so just keep that in mind. However, this thing has much better handling. So I do believe that the Zion is a much better vehicle than the Sentinel XS, and out of the two, I would definitely have it. If I only had 60 grand to spend, I would definitely buy this thing every single time. Unfortunately, it's not as good looking as the Sentinel XS, but performance-wise, I would say that the Zion is just a little tiny bit better. So anyway guys, that is it for the Zion at the top of C tier. It's time to get into some of the better vehicles that are made by Ubermacht and GTA in B tier. Next up, to start off B tier, of course, we have the Ubermacht Oracle. This thing comes in at $80,000 and it's actually cheaper than the Oracle XS. However, this thing does have a little bit better performance. Now, unfortunately, there's not much customization that can be done to the Oracle. There's more than you can do to the Oracle XS, just not by much. The Oracle itself doesn't really need much though, because it's just such a fantastic car from the start. Now, this thing does have some hood options, if I remember correctly. It also has a spoiler option, I believe. So you can do that to make this car a little tiny bit more unique. What I've done with mine is just completely blacked it out, put concave mega mesh rims on it, and I think that it looks absolutely fantastic. The performance of this vehicle for $80,000 is pretty much unmatched in all of GTA. There's a couple other cars that cost a similar amount of money that will get similar performance, but I think that the Oracle is truly one of the best performing vehicles for under $100,000 in all of Grand Theft Auto Online. And if you're just talking about four doors, I would say that the Oracle is definitely probably in the top 3. This thing looks fantastic, it performs amazingly well. It is a 4-seater, so you can roll around with 3 of your friends in it. The acceleration is quite good, the handling is pretty decent as well. Very similar to the Oracle XS, this thing does have the ability to drift. It can hold a slide decently. It's got an okay top speed, and overall it's just a great vehicle. It looks fantastic, it's pretty quick, and it handles well. What else can you really ask for, especially for the low price of $80,000? So that's pretty much it for the Oracle, guys. Let's move on to the next vehicle of B tier. Alright guys, next up we have the Ubermacht Sentinel Classic coming in at $650,000. This thing is available on Benny's now, and it's also available on Southern San Andreas Super Autos under the 2-door category. The Ubermacht Sentinel Classic is based off of an older M3 or 3 Series in general. Kind of depends which one you choose to kind of base it off of, and it does now have a wide body version that you can apply at Benny's for $700,000. The Ubermacht Sentinel Classic is a very good car. This thing does have very nice handling, it has good acceleration, a good top speed. It's a reasonable price as well, and for that price you get access to a ton of customization for this car. This thing could have been a Benny's vehicle even without a Benny's upgrade. It's got that much customization. You can make this thing look super unique, and I think that it's just a fantastic looking car in general. Definitely one that I would recommend picking up for sure. The Ubermacht Sentinel Classic for $650K is an absolute steal. Definitely is deserving of B tier. So that's pretty much it for the Sentinel Classic. Let's move on to the next vehicle, which is also the final vehicle of B tier. And for the final vehicle of B tier, we have the Ubermacht Zion Classic. Now the Ubermacht Zion Classic goes for a little bit more money than the Sentinel Classic, coming in at just over $800,000, but for the price, in my opinion, you do get a slightly better car. It's very similar. I mean, the Zion Regular is better than the Sentinel Regular in my opinion, and the Zion Classic is also better than the Sentinel Classic. This thing is just a little bit quicker in a straight line. It also has mildly better handling, similar to the Zion, and the top speed is also mildly superior. This thing has about the same amount of customization that you can do as the Sentinel, so I figured that based on the performance, it did deserve to be just ahead of the Sentinel Classic, however, not far ahead. Both are fantastic cars, both are ones that I would recommend picking up absolutely. I love both of these cars, I think they look fantastic, and the customization you get for them is absolutely awesome. So that's pretty much it for the Zion Classic at the end of B tier. It's time to move on to the start of A tier. And next up, to start off A tier, we have the Sentinel Classic Widebody that was just released into Grand Theft Auto Online a few short days ago with the Criminal Enterprises DLC drip feed. Now this thing took forever to release, but now we finally have it. In my opinion, the Sentinel Classic Widebody has kind of worse performance than the regular Sentinel Classic. That's not to say it's far worse, and really the only thing that's worse, I think, is actually the handling, and the handling is not that much worse. This thing, if anything, just kind of drifts a little bit more, but it is quite easy to control, so that is a good thing. The reason that I put this thing ahead of the regular Sentinel Classic is because of the acceleration increase, the top speed increase, and of course the extra customization options that you get on top of what the regular Sentinel Classic already provides you with. This thing looks absolutely fantastic. There's so much that you can do to it. I think that it's definitely a car that's worth owning. Now the upgrade is going to cost you $700,000 on top of the initial $650,000 for the Sentinel Classic. However, I do think that it is completely worth it. This car looks absolutely fantastic. I love it. I've been customizing it. I customized it this week and I've been driving it ever since, and I do think that it truly is one of the best classic cars in the entire game. So that's pretty much it for the Ubermacht Sentinel Classic Widebody. Let's move on to the next vehicle of A tier. Next up, we have the Ubermacht Reinhardt coming in at just under $1.6 million. Now the Ubermacht Reinhardt was also added with the Criminal Enterprises DLC into Grand Theft Auto Online, and it is a BMW sort of station wagon. I'm pretty sure it's based off of a 3 Series largely. You could say maybe it's based off of a 4 Series wagon if that's a thing, but I'm pretty sure it's only the 3 Series. Now, I've previously said that the Reinhardt is my favorite vehicle from the Criminal Enterprises DLC. This is not necessarily true anymore, however, I do think that this thing is absolutely fantastic. It's one of very few Ubermacht cars in the entire game that are all-wheel drive, which is kind of a nice feature to have, especially on a wagon type vehicle. This thing is super good off-road, super responsive, and very controllable. Now it does come at a cost. $1.6 million is quite a lot of money. However, it does also come with quite a lot of customization and generally very good performance in my opinion. The Reinhardt is definitely in my top 5 favorite vehicles from the Criminal Enterprises DLC. Definitely one that I'd recommend picking up because I think it is very unique. We don't get many station wagons in GTA, let alone ones that look this good. So anyway guys, that's pretty much it for the Ubermacht Reinhardt in A tier. It's time to move on to the final vehicle of A tier. Next up, for the final vehicle of A tier, we have the Ubermacht Revolter coming in at just over $1.6 million. Now the Ubermacht Revolter is yet another 4-door Ubermacht vehicle in Grand Theft Auto Online, and coincidentally, it is one of the only other all-wheel drive cars in the entire game. Now this thing does benefit pretty heavily from its all-wheel drive system. It gets an absolutely insane launch off the line. As you guys can see, this thing is super fast. I remember the first time that I drove the Ubermacht Revolter, I was blown away at how fast it was off the line. I still think it's one of the fastest accelerating cars from maybe 0 to like 30 miles per hour in the entire game. This thing is crazy quick. In addition to this, it's also the only Ubermacht vehicle that is armable in GTA Online. So this thing has front-mounted machine guns. They are not very good. They don't do a lot of damage, but I thought that that was worth noting. Now the Revolter is an absolutely huge car. This thing is very large. It is very long. Don't make any jokes. And you know, despite its size, it's actually got really good handling. And in addition to this, the top speed is quite high, and like I said, the acceleration is very good as well. Overall, I do feel like this car is deserving of being at the top of A tier simply for the fact that it's the only weaponized Ubermacht vehicle in the entire game, but also just because of how impressive the performance is of this car. This thing is super quick, it's super awesome to drive, definitely a car that I'd recommend picking up, maybe not at full price, but if you ever see it on sale, it's definitely one that I would suggest owning. Anyway guys, that's pretty much it for the Ubermacht Revolter, and that is it for A tier. It's time to move on to the top tier Ubermacht vehicles in Grand Theft Auto Online in S tier. So let's go ahead and get started. To start off S tier, we have the Ubermacht SC1 coming in at $1.6 million. This is a very cool car. It's also one of the only really high performance Ubermacht cars in Grand Theft Auto Online. I'm actually kind of surprised there's not more of them. It is pretty heavily based off of the BMW i8 in real life, which is kind of cool that they have something to kind of look like that car in GTA, although I don't really feel like it looks that much like the i8. Like from the front I can see it totally, but from pretty much every other angle I don't really see it. But anyways, regardless of this, the SC1 is a pretty decent car. It's actually quite quick in a straight line. It also has really good handling, and the top speed is the highest out of any Ubermacht vehicle on this entire list. Overall, the SC1 I do feel like is definitely deserving of being an S tier because of its performance and because it is really the only car with this much performance that Ubermacht makes in GTA thus far. So I feel like just based on that alone, it is pretty much a free guarantee to be an S tier. This car does handle really well, it accelerates well, it's got a decent top speed, it looks great. Really, there's nothing to dislike about the SC1. However, I just don't think that it's the best Ubermacht vehicle in the entire game. So with that being said, let's move on to the next vehicle of S tier. The next best Ubermacht vehicle in Grand Theft Auto Online is the Ubermacht Cypher. Now this thing does have a trade price going from $1.2 million if you have the trade price unlocked to $1.55 million if you do not have the trade price unlocked. Now, the Cypher is based pretty heavily off of the BMW M2 in real life, which is a very, very cool car. And in GTA, I feel like ROCKSTAR turned the copyright infringement dial up to 11 out of 10 with this thing because it is literally a BMW M2. There's no doubt about it. You can dress this thing up to be more of a M235i type of thing, an M240i if you want, or you can of course just go for the full like M2 comp build like I've sort of gone for with mine here. The Cypher has overall, I'd say, less performance than the SC1, but I'd say it's pretty similar in terms of ability. I do think that the Ubermacht Cypher might even handle a little bit better than the SC1 in my opinion. I do have a lot more experience with the Cypher, so I might be mildly biased in that take. But I do think that overall the Ubermacht Cypher is just the better vehicle of the two. I think that it looks better, it's got more customization options, it performs generally about the same, maybe better in some aspects, maybe worse in a few others. But I do feel like this truly is the second best Ubermacht vehicle in the entire game. And at its price point, which is a little bit cheaper than the SC1, I do think that it does deserve to be ahead of the SC1. So anyway guys, that's it for the Ubermacht Cypher. It's time to move on to the #1 Ubermacht vehicle in Grand Theft Auto Online, and I think that you guys probably already know what it is. At #1 we have the Ubermacht Rebla GTS. This is the best Ubermacht vehicle in all of Grand Theft Auto Online. The Ubermacht Rebla GTS is one of the best performing SUVs in the entire game, and therefore, in my opinion, it is the most valuable one to have because it will do the most for you in terms of performance. Now, that's not the only thing that I'm basing this ranking off of either, I will just say that. The Rebla GTS also probably has more customization options than any of the other Ubermacht cars, with exception to the Ubermacht Cypher that we just went over before this thing, which is why it's right behind this car. In addition to this is also cheaper than the Cypher and the SC1, coming in at only $1.2 million, actually just under $1.2 million. The Rebla GTS for an SUV handles like a sports car. This thing is absolutely impressive in every single way. You can also make it look extremely realistic, which is a very cool feature with this car. I think that Ubermacht in GTA generally does a great job of making the cars look very close to their real life counterparts. The Ubermacht Rebla GTS is based pretty heavily off of the BMW X5 in real life, and of course you can make it look very similar to the BMW X5M if you so choose. Overall, the Rebla GTS just has insanely impressive performance in my opinion. This thing handles extremely well, it accelerates well, it has a decent top speed as far as SUVs go, and it will outperform the majority of the sports cars class in the entire game. So I think that is definitely worthy of being at the #1 spot on the Ubermacht vehicle tier list. So that's pretty much all I got to say about the Ubermacht Rebla GTS. So there you have it guys, that has been it. The ultimate Ubermacht vehicle tier list in Grand Theft Auto Online in 2022. Let me know what you thought of my ranking in the comments down below. However, keep in mind that this list is 100% factual and cannot be argued with. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, like is of course appreciated. If not, dislike. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. and I will see you all in the next video. Until then, take care. Peace.